Good morning, class. I hope everybody's doing fine, and thank you for taking Brain Drain 101. The brain drain, or human capital flight, is defined as an emigration of trained or talented individuals to other nations or jurisdictions for reasons of either conflict, lack of opportunity, health hazards, or discrimination in the places they are living. Let's have a look at some numbers. Since the 1990s, Africa has been losing 20,000 skilled workers a year on average. And in that decade alone, the continent lost 30% of all its skilled workers. Now, you'd have to compare that against the college graduation rate to get a clear idea of what 20,000 skilled workers leaving annually represents. In fact, let's do this. The first one of you to give me the closest approximation by midnight Eastern Time tomorrow at my email address gets a bonus point in participation. Let's take two extreme examples now. Brazil, with a GDP inferior to that of South Africa, loses only 0.6% of all its skilled workers. With 188 million people living in Brazil, that's plenty of margin for error. But in Uganda, with only 28 million people, it's 15% of its skilled workers that leave every year. The first to leave tend to be doctors and otherwise related health workers. Our most eligible bachelors, in other words. Now, given that number and the high disease rate in Africa, how many diseases are cured by international assistance by the time they've already run their course anyway? In a survey conducted by Africa Recruits to doctors in Ghana, they cited the following reasons for migrating. 38% said further training, 28% wanted improved working conditions, 20% were looking for more money, and only 15% for a better managed health system. This means that 43% of those on the go were seeking more efficiency in the system, and almost 40% wanted better opportunities to train or practice. This means, in global terms, that 83% of all these doctors would stay if they had the proper capacity. It's just not there. But then again, it's a vicious circle. If all the doctors leave, how can they develop the capacity necessary? African doctors are not the only ones leaving to pursue higher education. 6 countries in the world host 68% of all mobile students: the USA, the UK, Germany, France, Australia, and Japan. African students are the most mobile in the world, with 1 out of 16 tertiary students abroad, or 5.6%. This may sound like little, but compared to the United States, where only 1 out of 250 students is abroad, or 0.4%. If we apply the math to these numbers, that means that 20 out of 320 African students are abroad, whereas in America, that would only mean 1.3. Granted, that is one continent versus one country, and the number one country in the world, where with 30% of all tertiary students, it gains more from abroad than the few students it loses every year, who will eventually come back. For America, this translates all the way into a brain gain. The students who go abroad come back with that experience, and the tertiary students from abroad tend to stay in the United States. Think about it. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Thank you for being so responsive. Remember, you can download the class on the website with the boards of the presentation and the relevant links. And, oh, yes, remember to answer the question I asked you earlier. Participation counts. I'll see you next week for Regular Migration 101.